we live in a very lost time, and we're not lost because of other like in other generations they were lost because they were in poverty or there was war, things like that. This is a very different time that has never been experienced in history, where we're lost because of the things that we've created, like technology. It's like every sci-fi movie ever made.
Totally, 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 totally not a podcast.
Like a lot of sci-fi movies address this. And I mean, the thing where sci-fi movies were wrong is like they always talk about like, oh, the technology itself is going to take over. That's not going to happen. I don't think we're anywhere near that stage. But we are at the stage where another thing I wanted to talk about is like where our right to privacy is like lost. Like, you know, your phone listens to you, dude. You know that. It's like when we talked about getting the sunglasses from the movie Scarface, and then all of a sudden, like, I got all these ads, you know. It's like I didn't look up any of like the stuff for sunglasses, and I got all these ads on Facebook and YouTube and on Google, and I was like, yeah,
sunglasses.
Your phone listens to you, and the government, and depending
somebody listens to me.
Depending on this guy, what is this, Joker? Are you a terrorist? Okay. Yeah, the apps of the specific businesses, they have access to all of this private information, your phone, where you're at, what you do, your contacts.
Well, we've made the choice.
This kind of access to private information would have never been legal like 30 years ago.
Well, here's the thing.
Never.
We consented to it.
It's consented.
We decided it's worth having this to give up
our privacy.
Our privacy. And eventually, we may give up our freedoms for this.
Yeah, it's like, it's scary. Like I said, the right to the privacy that the government and businesses have would have never been legal 30 years ago, like, no doubt. And now, like, people are, I mean, when it first came out, because, you know, obviously we were a part of that generation of phones coming into fruition. When they first came out, people were questioning the right to privacy and how much does the government have control over it.
Well,
people were starting to question that when phones came out. Well, you want to talk?
Well, okay. Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's the government, because obviously the government.
It's not just the government. It's businesses too.
Right.
It's a mixture.
Yeah, and
that
ahead. Act after 9/11 that was
Patriot Act.
Patriot Act is an example of like government saying totally infringing on our rights
for your safety.
But these companies are becoming so powerful that I mean, Facebook itself is a government in many countries.
Yeah.
They take over countries.
Yeah, I don't want it to make it seem like, oh, the government's the problem. Like, I mean, they kind of are right now, but that's not like my point in saying that is not. Yeah, I mean, they're using the fear factor. That's what they're trying to. I mean, they only want more control. That's why, you know, even Facebook, Zuckerberg, he had that, you know, long court case with them because they wanted more access to the private information, and he was like, no, I'm not going to give you that. Like, they only want more. So that's the scary part. Is like when phones first came out, people were questioning that, and there were a lot of movies. I think Mission Impossible 3 and a couple other movies, like they addressed like the idea of like even The Dark Knight, where like he has all of like their information, and they're like, this is wrong.
This is wrong.
Yeah, like dated.
I always hear that quote, yeah.
Now, each generation has been accepting that
Worst
more
part of that movie,
and
too.
more and more. Yeah, that's the crazy part.
So unexplained, it just comes out of nowhere. So that's another point.
Yeah, well, it's, you know, social commentary, whatever.
So
unnecessary.
They didn't set it up at
unnecessary, all.
Yeah. I connected all the phones in the area to scan the 3D.
The point is, in the early 2000s, a lot of people were thinking about it then. Now, like I said, we're 2 generations away from that. Yeah. We're in the 2020s, and now each generation has been accepting it more and more, which is dangerous. It's like, how far is this going to go?
And everyone is a celebrity now. Yeah. In that 50 years ago, you did not have 100 pictures of yourself. You did not have people liking and saying, oh, I love that picture. Because there was a time where to get a picture out to people, you have to mail it or get in a newspaper. But now everyone is a minor celebrity because we can have our own little worlds. Maybe we have 200 followers. Most people have 1,000 followers. I mean, it's really, like, you look around, these people, I don't have 1,000 followers. Like, share, it's just kidding. But, you know, there are a lot of people that they are like minor celebrities living in a world.
That's a really good way to put like Instagram and social media. It's like, it makes you feel like a minor celebrity.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, the biggest problem I see with technology is that it's created a false reality.
And what is the reality? Judah?
Well, like you said, being a fake celebrity, having like your life is great, you know, even
Well, that's the false reality.
yeah, that's what the reality that social media has created, and that's not like oh that's their fault. Like that's like you said, that's because of humans in general.
But what
That's
is
not
what is the real
anybody really to blame.
What's
Uh,
the real reality?
Of what?
That you
The
are
problem?
claiming technology is distracting us from. What's
Oh.
the reality?
Well,
What are we
you know,
losing out on here? I want to know. What
love.
Love?
All you need is love. Yeah, well, human connection, I would say, and creating, and yeah, like you said, even just interacting. Like I like, you know, interacting. I like talking on the phone. You know, I don't like texting because like I hate it. I've never been into
Yeah,
it
it's hard.
because you can't read anybody, and it's not personal.
Yeah.
And you can make a persona. It's like, you know, like you could talk to someone on social media like the deepest conversations, and then like you meet them in person and they're completely different. You don't know them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's why I mean I wrote a movie.
I don't know you anymore.
Every movie I've ever seen. I wrote a whole movie about that, about
Mhm.
a guy who, you know, he thinks he knows his girl because of the fact that he's talked about so many deep things with her and all this stuff online, and then he meets her in person. She's a completely different person
Mhm.
because it's easy to fake a persona, and that's what the fake reality that's become more and more accepted, you know, in our culture. And like I said, it's only going more towards that way. It's not going less.
But people, so
You know.
let's go to this. People have been around for thousands of years without this kind of technology.
Mhm.
Was life better?
No. And yeah, that's definitely not my point in like bringing this up. Things were better when we were kids.
So,
That's
but
not the
what
point.
I'm taking
Yeah.
this as, you're saying there's something that they had that we are losing. And
Yes.
there's something, if we
Yeah.
had both, that we are paying a price for this technology. That's what I'm taking what you're
Yeah,
saying as.
I think there are certain things that need to be taken in place. Like we've never had this problem in history of, you know, yeah, this new reality and, you know, our right to privacy completely being taken away subtly through this little thing.
Yeah.
You know.
This
And
little
like I
thing.
said, it's not like, oh, you know, it was like that and now they're changing. It's like, no, they're trying to make it more like that.
Yeah.
More and more. So that's what makes it
But
scary.
who's they?
Well, the culture.
They?
When I say they, I mean the culture.
When I hear
We're
they,
accepting it. We're accepting it.
I think of they. The owls.
Who's they? They.
The
Oh,
owl.
the Illuminati. Tony Illuminati.
It's
But
Illuminati.
yeah, the problem is, you know, children they adapt to their environment. That was my best Polanski impression.
Oh, I thought that was Vito
No,
Corleone.
that was terrible. That was my Polanski impression because there's a video where he
yeah,
talks about.
he does kind of talk like that.
Yeah, there's a video where he talks about that, him in the Holocaust and why he never questioned it because that was his reality.
Mm.
And he never questioned his reality as like a 9-year-old to 10-year-old, 13-year-old.
Roman Polanski,
Yeah,
director,
he's made a lot of great films. He still does.
also a rapist.
Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so he's one of my favorite directors. I always thought he was underrated, but as an artist. But yeah, he had this point because he grew up in the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And so he talks about like, yeah, the interviewer, talked about how he was like, oh, that must have been terrible. You must have been like scared all the time and freaking out, and you know, life must have been horrible. You must have had panic attacks. And he was like, no, I mean, this is just the way the reality was. I mean,
Yeah.
me seeing someone get shot on the street, that's literally the
Yeah.
way things were.
And this is
I
a
didn't
brilliant
question
point
it.
because ultimately technology is not the problem. Technology has made a lot of things amazing.
Yeah,
But the problem.
that's what I'm going to talk about next.
Yeah, the problem really, something's going on here that I think people are, like coronavirus is a perfect example. What is the message that we've been hearing? You need to be afraid. You need to be terrified. You need to be willing to surrender everything to those in power because they're going to protect you.
It's like the Patriot Act,
Yeah.
but like an extreme example.
There's a message
Yeah.
of be afraid and be what would you call that? Enclosed and fixated, because there is a world around us that we cannot even see. There's a spiritual world that we have to work in order to connect to. And I think that we are losing that understanding of the world around us because we're losing. That's the goal. Because as long as it can become less and less that we're connected to that, maybe that's what you meant by the reality that we're losing. As long as we can be fixated on the product, which Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, those are products, and they want to bring you back to that. YouTube,
Yeah,
it's a drug, it's an addiction.
Everything is programmed. Like even like the buzz on your phone, or the dings, all of that is made to control you.
Yeah,
You
which should make sense if you're a business owner, just like we want to make films. If I'm going to make a film, I am going to not manipulate, but it's more create something that you respond to chemically, emotionally, spiritually.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem with businesses, I guess, we can go into that, is like nowadays they don't have a whole lot of limits. They don't have a whole lot of, like when you open a restaurant, there's certain, what?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, no, I think I'm following.
When you open a restaurant, you have a lot of regulations.
Yes, too many.
Yeah, and I agree that you have too many, but the idea of a regulation is like, to protect the safety of the people. And obviously that gets taken advantage of, but like I agree. I think that they need that more in a lot of ways because they are using it, this guy, libertarian. So I think, no, well, that is the problem. They don't have a lot of regulations because this is a new thing. It's not even like, it's weird because it's weird. It's also interesting to see like how we're already growing numb to social media, even though it's like only like 10 years old. It's not that old.
But you can't.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole political discussion. But I get what you're saying. But here's my proposal. People need to wake up. We need to take those masks off. We got to take the mask off.
No, this guy.
We got to wake up.
It might not exist by the time this is.
Oh, they'll be around. Believe me. You got to take that thing off. You got to light it on fire. Mask on fire. And wake
controversial.
Up. Okay, but we can cut this out. But people need to wake up because they're.
Wake up, bro.
That's why I told you on the phone once. We're all kings.
I'm called to be the leader of the free world.
No, dude, we are kings, man. We have the potential to be kings.
Right.
Because we're human beings. And people, we have this plus 10,000 in us, to do and create. This can only do so much. It's a tool. But we ourselves have every person that's alive, even the person with the most debilitating illness or mental illness or what, they still have a power within them because they're a human being. I mean, we've seen that, Helen Keller.
Yeah, there's a lot of examples. Stephen Hawking.
Yeah, and what I'm trying to get at is as long as, and it's so hard, like I can testify to that. Waking up in the morning, the first thing you want to do is look at your phone. It's probably not good for you, but that's the first thing you want to do.
It controls you.
Yeah,
that's why.
First thing before you go to bed, first thing you wake up doing would be look at your phone, check, make sure.
And even when I false reality, it's like, you scrolling and seeing people on, line with their pictures, on like this and everything's like that's not real. That's not real life. That's the false reality that we have created. It's not anybody's fault, really. The only problem is like, which I would say is the biggest problem with capitalism in general, even though I think capitalism is the best, thing for, humans. Yeah. But the biggest problem with it is that, if there are no limits, then, the interest of the people gets lost. And it's more about like how they can profit off of it.
But that's the thing, dude. So the freer everything is, you're going to get a Mark Zuckerberg, a Zuck, with a lot of power, a lot of money.
Lizard robot.
If everything's free, you can have a person like you or me, a Martin Luther King Jr. You can have something like that. I don't know, anybody that can say, I'm creating the next thing, or I'm going to change the culture.
Yeah.
In a way that changes things for everyone. And that's why it's really a culture problem.
It is. I 100% agree. It's not like, oh, it's Facebook's fault, it's the government's fault. It is just the culture that we've accepted. It's like, what kind of culture do we want? as an American
Yeah.
society. It's like that's gotten lost because we've just allowed it to be technology in
And
itself.
I'm just to clarify, because I feel like we didn't define it in the beginning as well. Like we kind of talked, but what would it be? Selfishness or being absorbed in one's own surrounding life rather than seeing more? I don't know. Like, would that be the heart of the issue? Is that what you would say the heart of the problem is?
Is what, selfishness?
Well, self-absorption.
Yeah, well, that's definitely a problem. I mean, that's always been something that's been celebrated in America. You know what I mean? For a long time at least. Like the idea of like self-absorbed and it's in a
Yeah.
different way now
I mean,
than
I
it's
feel
ever
like
been.
in America, the ideal is always you get married, you have kids, you own a house, you retire. Like, I feel like that was always the ideal. Now the ideal is becoming more and more me. Me.
Me.
No kids.
Yeah. No, yeah, a lot of people don't want kids and
No kids, man. I can't deal with that shit. I don't
So-
need that shit in my life.
this guy. So, yeah, I mean, that's been changed. And that's for a lot of things. It's because of universities and things like that where they promote the idea of, just identity politics and
Yeah.
stuff like that. That's a whole nother problem.
Yeah, like
and technology.
Mank is more than Orson Welles because he's the victim.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the victim mentality is something that's celebrated. It's the things, you're right, it is the culture, ultimately. It's the things that we have allowed to be rewarded and celebrated in the culture. And things like selfishness and, things like that, materialism, all these kind of things are the things that are rewarded.
Yeah.
And that's why creative people aren't as successful.
Well, yeah.
And that's why people, who are, like genuinely like want to create something new, they're not always as successful or as even paid attention to in the beginning, because it's like they're like, all right, how are you trying to make money off of this? How
That's
all this
always
stuff.
been the system in many ways.
It's it's definitely a problem. But I mean, there are good things to technology, like even Blender. The fact that you told me about it, which Blender is a site where you can make computer-generated imagery for free.
Yeah, it's
Like,
mind-blowing.
It's like, CGI is not that old. I mean, Lucas's
Yeah.
company made it, what, in the 80s? It's
Yeah.
not that old, right? And now we're at the point where like you can make like a Pixar movie for free
Yeah.
if you put in the work to it.
Yeah,
And that's
what
amazing.
It's creating a freer society, but at the same time, I think the pop culture element and the media, the way that the media owns, they are the most powerful thing in the world. I think because they
Control the
they are the
culture.
ones that shut down every country in the world this year, and destroyed so many people's lives. Made one politician look good and made the other politician look bad, or whatever works for the narrative.
That's true.
Because it's all who knows why. Maybe it's just for ratings, but the truth is that when you have such a power, you will make most people feel weak and powerless. When you have that much power, you are the king. That's why I say we're all kings. We just need to
We're
wake up
all
to it, man,
kings.
because we don't need this powerful force of media and technology to change the way we think. Everyone that wakes up and says, look how much better my life is if I take personal responsibility and wake up at a decent time and exercise and eat the right kinds of foods, and look how much better my life is, and live a selfless life, those kinds of things that really, those are the things that really change. But I don't think it always serves the narrative best,
It's an interesting topic, yeah, because it's like there's a lot that goes into it. Like I said, the biggest, like we said in the beginning, the biggest problem I would say is like, it's like we have so much easy access to everything that it's like, it's making, it's created a much lazier generation. Now you could argue it's created a smarter generation. Like there's certain, like access to information that you could have only gotten if you looked at like a library or went to a university that you
But
can
even-
easily get online
studying
if you look.
education is like, it's harder to remember stuff now. I feel like we're
Even reading, like you're like, I don't want to read that. I'd rather just
yeah
watch a video on it.
immediacy. That's a hard thing, but
Laziness.
I believe we need both, and it needs to come down to the individual. People have to make the choice. Do I want to make my life that the first and last thing I do every day is look at my phone?
Well, yeah,
Right?
I agree
People have
with
to
that.
make that choice, and
I agree with that. Ultimately, it always comes down to that. Every issue comes down to like you as an individual, like Jordan Peterson always says, right? I do think, like if you're a parent, like you have control over whether or not your children goes on a phone. I mean, ultimately, even your parents are kind of limited to that, depending on. I mean, if you let your kids go to school, or they're gonna find the stuff, like
they're gonna get the stuff.
yeah. If a kid really wants to use something like that or go on social media, they're gonna find out a way. Their parents are not gonna stop them. So it's like I do think businesses and even the government and we have like a responsibility. I would just say as a society to make sure that this doesn't go too far. I would say at the same time because especially children, they have like children, as I said before, they adapt to their environment. So they're gonna do what everybody else is doing, or so like even if your parents tell you not to do this or not to do that, but you see everybody else doing it, and like there's kids that are doing it, and that's the way the culture is celebrated. Then like the majority of kids are gonna like do that. Now, obviously, like we've talked about before, children aren't just robots, so it's not like that's the only thing. But I'm just talking about the majority.
Yeah.
And so I would say, there needs to be more. There needs to be a responsibility on certain businesses and the government too, in terms of like how much access to private information that they have. And like I said, the government's only trying to go more towards that route. It's not like.
But what is the government at this point? Brazil. That's the government.
Brazil.
You can't stop it, dude. That's the point of that movie. It becomes a tangled web of weird. It's like a weird cancer, of so much bureaucracy and so many people with so much power and departments with so much power that what really is in control. And how do you make a difference? That's where people become powerless. And that's why Brazil is such a brilliant movie.
It's a good movie.
People will. I think that's the best representation of a dangerous government or a dangerous power.
It's the most interesting because most are like black and white kind of thing. That one.
Yeah, this one there is no king. The thing itself is the king, and you become powerless because there's nothing to stop. Because everyone becomes part of the problem, and we all allow this government, shadow government, or technology or corporation to control us. And we all make the decision, everybody's going to wear a mask. And if you don't wear a mask, you're weird.
Die.
I'm going to look at you, and we're going to kick you out, and you lose your rights. That's kind of how things begin. And as long as we let that happen, things are going to get worse and worse.
It's scary because I mean obviously these times are changing, they are, and it's like it looks like it's for the worst for the most part, like with the things with the government and the coronavirus, and it's scary, and it's gonna get better. It always gets better, but it's just a matter of like how and when, and I mean we're at the generation, we're at the age where like we can make a difference.
Come on. Totally, 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 totally not a podcast. Totally.